Hello, listeners. I'm Timstradamus, and Ugly Sweater season starts right now. And joining me, as always, is my talented and beautiful co-hostess, Voyse.
Good morning, Timstradamus, and welcome to all of our listeners. Timstradamus, would you like to hear another joke?
Let's go.
What is the Grinch's favorite board game?
A holiday hobie waddy.
I like that, but it's actually Monopoly.
Monopoly. For new listeners, Voyse and I enjoy reading and talking about stories from the internet that are interesting, funny, and dramatic. Because of our love of stories, we've come together and created this channel to share with you those experiences.
And give you hoo-hash for that.
So, Voyse, what have you crafted for me on this chilly morning?
I created for you a fruity brew. I actually mixed some green and black tea together, and then I added some dried fruits, pineapple, mango, raspberry, and strawberries to give it that little bit of fruity punch.
Oh, yes. That is fantastic. 5 out of 5 easily.
Oh, perfect. Well, while you go ahead and enjoy your fruity brew, let's go ahead and delve into these stories. For any listeners wanting to follow along, all story links are in the description below. Let's start our first story with, am I the a-hole for saying to my wife that I'm the one who gets to make decisions about my niece? My 43 male niece, 14 female, is being raised by my wife, 40 female, and I. It's a long story, having to do with my sister getting herself pregnant from a deadbeat and proving overall unfit to be a mother. Bottom line is, I see my niece as my daughter and love her just as much as my own biological children, 11 male and 8 male. I know my wife also loves her the same way. However, I'm legally my niece's sole legal guardian. My niece has practiced gymnastics for the past 10 years. And when she was about 7 or 8, one of the coaches at her gym took notice of her potential and suggested she could make it as a professional athlete. I personally believe my wife and my niece/daughter were taken by this promise of future glory. Can you imagine if she competes in the Olympics one day? My wife said. I was always very cautious because I do realize the shots are slim. I also knew that could cost us a lot of money going forward. But the coach believed so much in her that they managed to cover some of the costs of her training on the gym's dime. And when I'm saying training, I mean training. Some serious hard work. I told them I was fine with the idea as long as my niece was happy doing gymnastics. And it didn't majorly impact her life. And then last month, she tore her ACL during practice. We do have insurance, so the medical costs were covered. However, she's going through a painful recovery, all the while wondering when she'll be healthy enough to get back to the gym. But I told my wife I don't want her to do this anymore. Seeing her get hurt and in pain made me realize this is a dangerous sport, and the toll it's taking on her body is simply not worth it. My wife said I couldn't make this decision without considering what my niece wants. I said I can because I'm the adult here and she's still a child. So my wife said there was still the matter of her disagreeing with my view, and that we were supposed to make this parenting decisions together. I then said that's true regarding our boys, but not when it comes to my niece. All I meant is that I'm the sole guardian in the sense of being responsible for her. What my wife got is that I was undermining her as a surrogate mother. Am I the a-hole here? Edit. Some additional information. To be clear, I still haven't talked to my niece about this. I shared with my wife that, given the severity of her injury, I didn't want her training anymore. This discussion was between my wife and I. It didn't involve our girl so far. Am I the a-hole?
Got him. That very last sentence. It didn't involve our girl so far. Our girl. Understand what you just said. Your wife is that little girl's mother. No differently than you look at that little girl as your daughter. The fact that you use something like that in a callous trump card way, you're an a-hole. And I'm not even considering the fact that you haven't talked to your niece about a very life-changing decision you're trying to make for her. How old is she now?
14. And she's been doing this for, what he says, gymnastics for 10 years.
10 years. She's only been on Earth for 14 years. And 10 of those years, she's been giving her blood, sweat, and tears, and time to. And you want to take it all away because of an injury. I understand that is an ACL. That is painful. Take some time to recover. But if that girl wants to continue trying to strive for that dream, because apparently enough people believe in her that they're willing to help finance that dream.
Oh, yes, that's pretty big.
If that's something she still wants to do, you will at least need to hear her out before you make some type of decision like that. Could you imagine something that you love and you're striving for? Now, I get it if it's something that she's half-heartedly into and you feel like you've been forcing her this entire time. Maybe this is the exit door. But that's a conversation that you need to have had with her first. I think you need to reprioritize the way you're looking at things and have other people's opinions matter. How long have they had her now? Has it been this entire time?
I believe it has.
Man, you're ridiculous. Hopefully people gave you perspective before you end up making decisions in your niece's life that can't be undone.
Well, the consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. In fact, they say that when he talks about his family, how he's segmenting their relationships is actually pretty gross. You're trying to put what your wife thinks to the side because you legally are the one that has custody of your niece. However, it's not just you that's been parenting alone. And as you put it out there, Timstradamus, you can't pick and choose when it is that she needs to be a mother. Now, additionally, we had many people come out saying, if this is her dream, if this is what she loves and looks forward to, and you're trying to strip that from her, all that you're going to do is gain yourself hate from her and potentially a life full of regret. There were a lot of individuals that said that they had parents who took away the things that they loved, convinced them that it wasn't for them, and it led them with a life full of regret. I think that there's something to be said when you decide to give up on a dream to somebody making you believe that you should give up on that dream.
It's got to come from that person first. And yes, like some of those people said, they remembered when they were coerced and coached into quitting. It's not a good thing, and people remember that. And for the OP in this, he has to understand that, especially when you're talking about gymnasts, man, that window is so small.
Oh, it is.
She's already set herself back, and that recovery is going to be difficult. And that window might be already shrinking, but that shouldn't be smaller because of your finger on the weight.
Well, let's go ahead and go to our next story, and I've got another really weird one for you. Am I the a-hole for seeing my partner peeing?
Okay, this happens every day.
My partner, male 41, and I, female 36, have been together for 6 years and have lived together for 5 of those. In the entire time we've been together, I've never seen him use the restroom. He's made it clear he feels extremely uncomfortable at the idea of me seeing him or being in the same room, i.e. if I'm brushing my teeth before bed and he is about to use the bathroom, one of us leaves. Even though we've been intimate, etc., I totally understand wanting privacy, especially regarding number 2, but I have no problems peeing in front of him because it's just peeing to me and not a violating situation. I've teased/asked if I could see him pee at some point because, and genuinely, I've never seen a guy pee up close in real life. I didn't have brothers growing up, and it's just not something I was exposed to, so it was just sort of a funny request of mine to finally see it. 1,000% not in a pervy way, just like, that's how they do it. Today, I was letting out our dog and turned around to truly accidentally see him peeing in our bathroom. We have a giant window that is exposed to the back, so there is truly no privacy if someone is in the bathroom and another person is in the back. I giggled because I was shocked that after all this time, I randomly finally saw it happen. I did turn around and not just ogle. When I came in, I was playful and said, "I saw you," thinking it would be a funny bonding moment. Instead of laughing with me, he replied extremely upset and very angry. He yelled and said he felt extremely violated, that I was creepy and a perv and couldn't understand how I didn't understand how absolutely disgusting and violating it was. I felt bad, but also was more in shock and confused by the response and emotion because A, I didn't feel like he had anything to be embarrassed about, i.e. we've both been with each other naked, etc. B, I feel like I've heard of partners number twoing in front of each other and way more vulnerable acts. C, it was overwhelming trying to process such an angry and vicious response. So, am I the a-hole? I absolutely understand the need for privacy in general, and maybe I need to be more empathetic and understanding to someone who has different levels of comfort, but also the reaction just felt so extreme regarding something so innocent, especially when you're in an intimate partnership. However, maybe I truly am in the wrong? Please advise.
If you've been in a long enough relationship as a guy, you've probably been asked this. It's the weirdest question because you're like, why would you want to watch? And the way she explains it is the way I've always heard it. I mean, I don't have a problem with that, especially when you've been in a relationship for as long as we have, or OP and his, I think they're girlfriend and boyfriend. They're not married.
Correct.
I think they said 6 years, something like that. But really what the story comes down to for me is that your partner on your request told you no. And I'm not certain as to why he feels the way he does, but there's a reason for it. That should have been respected. Yeah, sure. Could he have handled it differently? Everyone can, especially when it comes to being offended or hurt by someone. You can always handle things better, but the problem was you didn't respect his boundaries. And at the end of the day, that makes you an a-hole.
Well, the consensus on Reddit was our OP is the a-hole. The bottom line when it came to a lot of commenters is no means no. Now, there were some pretty mean Redditors that said, he should man up and get over it. I think that's a really callous response because I have to there was one person that said, reverse these roles. You've made it clear that you're uncomfortable with this, and he goes beyond what you're comfortable with. You're not allowed to gatekeep how he feels upset. This for him was violating, and he's allowed to feel that. And those are very valid feelings. What you needed to do was acknowledge that these are okay for him to feel and that you're apologetic that it happened. Now, some commenters reached out and said, why is it that there's a wide open window that you could see somebody peeing like this?
There's plenty of homes that are like that, though.
And there are. In fact, our OP says, maybe we'll go ahead and we'll put something up so nothing like this ever happens again. The reason why the window was wide open is because it faces the back towards, I'm guessing,
trees and...
Yeah, and it's very private, so they never really thought that they had to. No, I have to say, there were a lot of individuals that try to call her out for having a kink. Our OP vehemently denies that she has any kind of kink. It really does sound like curiosity, although it sounds like curiosity took a different life of its own. However, I'd say in the end, as long as she goes back and truly apologizes to her partner, everything will be well. Well, let's go ahead and go to our next story and hear about a famous person. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife she's not famous? I, 37 male, and my wife, Jane, 28 female, have been together for 5 years and married for 2. Our relationship was always good, but it's taken a downturn recently. When we got together, we had the same job, made similar amounts of money, and attended a lot of social events both separately and together. A year ago, Jane won a life-changing amount of money, in the millions, and quit her job to set up some charities that help our local community. She's always been active in our community. She donates books to the library, volunteers for book groups, goes to community council, etc. But ever since setting up her charities, she spends a lot of time away from home and at events. She always invites me, but I rarely go as they're long and boring, and frankly, the amount of time she goes to is exhausting. She's now so well known in the community, we can't go out without someone talking to her on the street or recognizing her. I feel like I'm in a relationship with her voicemail sometimes. I decided to confront her about it, and we had a massive argument. during which she said she enjoys talking to people in our community and hearing how she helped them. I told her she's selfish and throwing money at a small-ass town doesn't make her famous. She's saying she wasn't trying to be, and that I know how much the community and helping people means to her and why, that I had gone too far. She's now staying with her aunt and won't talk to me. Am I the a-hole?
Oh, jealousy, what it does to thee.
And rears its head once again.
So I can understand a little bit from maybe how he's feeling. He just went about it the wrong way. Because what you can hear from the onset of this is he's not getting what he needs from that relationship, right? I guess she won a nice sum of money and now she's giving back to the community. She's going to a lot of different events, but it's eating up a lot of her time. And obviously from the way it sounds, he's not getting enough time with his wife, in his opinion. Now, he doesn't say anywhere in there that they've had a conversation about how she needs to start balancing her work life with her personal life, because that's important. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, when they get into the hobbies or their job, they can kind of push everything else to the side and forget that balance is important, especially if you're in a relationship, right? There are plenty of people that do the types of things his wife is doing, but they're single. But they're single for a reason. They understand that they just can't allocate time to someone else. So that's a conversation that our OP definitely needed to have already had with his wife. Because it sounds like their lives have kind of gone in different directions, especially since she's won that money. So I can understand it from his point of view, why the events happened the way they did. It's not appropriate the way they happened, but I can get where at least his mind space is at. You got to learn how to communicate with your wife. Not just going, you're not famous. When your wife, I doubt, has been doing this for fame. Like she says, there are people you're going to find that genuinely just love helping. And it's the craziest energy to encounter.
Oh, yes. Those people are just a sight to behold. Their charisma is on a different level.
So to kind of put a bow tie on this one, you're definitely the a-hole.
Well, our consensus on Reddit is that our OP is the a-hole. And I would just like to point out a couple things that was pointed out by the commenters section. They actually said when OP and his wife met, he was 32 and she was 23. That's a little significant of an age gap. Now, not to say that it was illegal. It has nothing to do with that. What it has to do is a difference of frame of mind. She was probably a very meek woman, which is how it kind of seems, where they were doing things together, but she would come to some of his events and then they would go to their own events. And it makes me wonder if when she finally had a lot of money, now those dynamics fully changed. Now the control wasn't even between the two of them. It wasn't where his experience trumped hers, because now she had the necessary funds and means to do what she wanted to do. I think that there's a little bit of a dynamics in their relationship between the age and now the amount of money that each of them have. Simply because he's talked about it. She quit her job, but they both had the same job before. They were of the same level and now they're not. It makes it feel as if maybe he has some control and now he no longer has that kind of control. So much so that instead of going to her and talking to her about how he feels, he instead lashes out, which is how a lot of people tend to act when they lose control of things. Now, I cannot 100%. This is simply what the comment section has put inside to allow our OP as food for thought.
You know, I wouldn't have gone about it in that direction only because he says that she goes to a lot of these events and openly invites him to come along, but he never takes them. Correct. So that's where I was like, well, if there was a control problem that was happening in this part of their relationship, I'm not talking about when they met when they were 23. I didn't realize the age gap was that big at the beginning, because now what would she be? 28. 28. Okay. So she's firmly in control of her faculties and her choices, especially because, yes, she did get the money. But like I said, if there had been any red flags to me as far as a control issue, it would have happened when he's going, well, instead of being invited to go to these things, he's telling her, no, I'm not going in. In fact, you're not going. I didn't hear any of those type of things. I heard, hey, look, we're not spending any more time together the way it used to be.
And that's where I kind of stem back to, I will get what I heard from you, Timstradamus, and what I heard from the comment section, which is their age gap is pretty significant. Significant enough that she's still going through phases of her life, and he's actually witnessing these phases. When some couples get together and they have more of an age gap, and you're going up to that, I would say your biggest phases happen between the ages of 18, when you set out into the world, and 30, when you've made your fair share of mistakes and fixed them. She's hitting into that 30 range. I feel like she's got more control of what she wants to do now. And it doesn't seem like they're on the same page any longer. And this is where I can understand and see it from your point of view, Timstradamus. There's no more time for the two of them. He feels more that he's talking to her voicemail than to her. And that's become a big problem. But that's where a change in who a person is, their hobbies, their interests and priorities in life, he's witnessing all of this now, and she has the means to do the things that she loves more and more, so much so it's pulling away from their relationship. I see that they are both growing, but they're growing apart. Now, his lashing out was inappropriate, which is why I will forever tag that as you're the a-hole. It's not what you do in your good moments. It's what you do in your bad moments that truly reflect who you are.
Agreed.
Well, let's go on to our very last story of the day and check out what this whole situation's about. Am I the a-hole for telling my husband to get over my sister getting into an accident in his car? A couple years back, my 36 female sister, 31 female, lived with us. In this specific case, she was running late to work and her car was in the shop at the time. She begged my husband, 37 male, to use his car, but he kept denying her and telling her she's too inexperienced. She's been driving for a year and a half at that time. Well, she was in a rush, and she made the not-so-great decision and took his car without his consent. My husband rushed out of the door as soon as he heard the engine start, but he was too late. Well, like I said, my sis was in a rush and ran a red light, causing her to get in an accident. She apologized profusely, and I barely convinced my husband to not press charges and or take her to court. The total cost amounted to $15,000 in damages that my husband had to pay out of pocket. Anyways, let's get to the actual situation. We host family reunions every year at our house, where both sides of her family come over to party and catch up. My sister came, obviously, and it was pretty awkward when they were around each other. I was talking to my husband and sis about investing, and when my sis chimed in about buying some apartment rooms or houses to rent out, my husband then just came in and said, "Let's hope you don't cause $15,000 in damages this time." My sis just got up and left after that. I brought my husband into the living room inside and told him he needed to get over whatever BS he's holding on to, and I reminded him that accident happened almost 4 years ago. He then said, "Okay, so right now I'll throw your shit in the trash, and in 2027, if you're still mad, I'll bring up this exact conversation." Since then, I've kind of been giving him the cold shoulder and have been ignoring any request to talk it out in a civil manner. Am I the a-hole?
You had 4 years to talk it out in a civil manner with your husband and I guess your sister in the situation, because I never heard anywhere in your story that there was ever a plan to repay. I heard that you said your husband had to pay $15,000 out of his pocket. Why did he have to?
Would you like to know the answer to that question?
Please enlighten me.
Well, our OP confirms that her sister hasn't paid him back for this. In fact, her callous response to someone saying that's hard for anyone to let go is, "It's not that hard to let it go. $15,000 is 2.7% of the average orthopedic surgeon salary in our state." I'm guessing her husband is an orthopedic surgeon and he makes quite a bit of money.
And that's why it doesn't matter to her.
Correct.
Got it. That ends up being the issue here. I love how that's how people measure each other and how they should be responding. Well, of course you make so much money in the occupation you do. Why would you be upset with someone breaking your things and taking your things without your permission? You shouldn't be. Your money can buy more. The point is, he worked for those things. She stole it, effectively, and then could have done a lot of harm. She ran a red light. She got into an accident. I hope the person that got into that accident with her sister is okay.
Agreed.
And he has every right to feel a certain way. Because it sounds like all you've told your husband about this situation is he should just suck it up. You never looked at it from his side. It was only your sister's. And I can understand when people go through hard times, or how young is this sister?
Right now, she's 31.
Okay. So
But
at the time it happened.
It was 4 years ago.
Yeah. So she'd be, what, 27?
Correct. And she'd only been driving for a year and a half. That would put her at 25, 26.
I'm not sure why she was in a rush. You don't really explain any of those things, but those don't really matter to the crux of this. She stole the car, she got in an accident, and she has not paid for anything. I don't hear a payment plan being put in place. I just hear, suck it up, you make enough money, Buttercup. I can understand why there's resentment and anger in the family. You've done nothing to help any of it. So, in my opinion, OP, you are a gigantic a-hole.
Well, our consensus on Reddit is that our OP is definitely the a-hole. In fact, they went in pretty hard on her. Many individuals said, your sister stole and damaged his property. Your sister committed a crime and literally was never paid back for it. It doesn't have anything to do with the money. It has to do with the remorse. And if your sister's not willing to go ahead and make good on what she's done wrong, it doesn't matter how much anyone makes. What it has to do with is your sister's actions and your excusing of those actions. I have to side with everyone on this. The fact that our OP writes off her husband's feelings, I think is pretty disgusting. And then on top of that, for her to not at least show her sister that what she's done was wrong and to actually find a way to repair the damage of distrust that now resides within the family, but instead uses the, well, he makes enough excuse, I see it as very classless to me. I think in the comment section, you get the person that she is when she instead tries to brush off all of it simply because her husband makes enough and that should be enough.
That's why I laugh when people are like, well, it only costs this much. No. It has nothing to do with the cost. It was the importance that that person put into it by even getting the item.
The thing that I find interesting about their dynamics is that she puts out that she has been ignoring any requests to talk it out civilly. She has been ignoring civil talk between her and her husband. And this is where, for me, I stem that she is probably a person that is very difficult to speak to begin with.
Hopefully, people gave her some food for thought and maybe she can start getting her and her husband into some type of counseling because that's unhealthy. Well, was that our last story?
That was our last story.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Well, as our stories come to a close, don't forget, you see in the world what you carry in your heart.
If you have enjoyed listening to us read and talk about today's stories, please rate, subscribe, and turn on notifications for new content. We regularly post on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. We would also love to thank all of our patrons for your continued support of us.
Yes, we love and appreciate every single one of y'all. As always, listeners, we look forward to hearing your opinions in the comments below. What did you think about the stories today?
I think the most funny and shocking one was probably the peeing one.
And remember, if you post it, maybe we'll see it on the internet.